Namaskaram. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you all to the last and final day of Navadisha Edition 3. Following on the heels of the first 2 days, where we discussed the syntax of dance literature. What does it mean to write a poem for dance? Is there something such as a dance poem? And yesterday, discussing can we formulate some kind of guiding principles to translate stories of any sort from any cultural background told by anybody into the idiom of dance while preserving the core values and the principles that define the spirit of that art form. It is but a logical conclusion today that we go on to discuss how all of this manifests in the solo format, ultimately, which is what most of us as young dancers, when we train, when we start taking our first steps in dance, strive to someday master. Today, we will be looking at some questions, specifically with respect to grammar and syntax in dance in the solo format. What are the principles that underline effective communication in solo repertoire pieces? Can there be a syntax for transcribing the world imagined by literature into the narrative and the visual world of dance? Can there be such a thing as a syntax for a dancer's imagination? What are the challenges and rewards when one moves away from traditional dance literature into a realm of other sources of regional and international literature? Can we frame a prescriptive syntax that can apply evenly to all of these extended contexts? We've spoken about the supporting areas, the literature. Last year, we discussed the idea of language, the genre of music that one may employ within the form, and how that affects or inspires the form that the dance itself takes. This year, we've discussed literature and narratives. But all of this aside, today we discuss the craft of dance itself and what are those guiding principles that define the craft of making dance. I'm very happy that today we will be starting our day with a young dancer with a wonderful artistic sensibility, Mahati Kannan. Mahati Kannan, besides being a very, very inspiring performer to so many of us young dancers in the field, is also someone who is building a strong foundation on the academic side and has completed a master's in art history from the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. And I'm very happy that today she will be talking to us about something that perhaps will resonate with many of us training with our own gurus, learning choreographies, trying to own these pieces of work, make it our own while we take it on stage and perform it. She will be talking to us about how she views, imbibes, and takes ownership of the choreographies that she has learnt from her guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. I welcome Mahati Kannan on stage.
Satgurubhyo Namaha. My humble namaskarams to the Almighty, my Guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, and to all the stalwarts and rasikas assembled here today. At the outset, thank you, Apurva Akka and the team of Navadisha for giving me this opportunity to speak on the stage. I will be speaking a little bit about Paduka's choreographic style and some of its components before talking about how I experience, what my experience is in performing and learning her choreographies. To say that Dr. Padma Subramaniam revolutionized the solo dance presentation style is an understatement. Her major thematic solo dance productions such as Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha, Ramaya Tubhyam Namaha, Bhagavad Gita, Jai Jai Shankara created waves in the field of Indian classical dance. I'm sure all of us have wondered from time to time in awe as to how exactly she creates these masterpieces. The sheer spontaneity of her choreography and the brilliance of her music composition is always a delight to experience. I've been watching the process since childhood, but began to understand and appreciate it only much later. To analyze it and put it into words has been quite a task, but a very exciting one. It gave me a chance to get a peek into her mind and her thought process. I'll be speaking about three main components. First, the basic choreography process, how she goes about it, then her music composition, and then the kind of literature that she likes to work with. For Paduka, the choreography and the music composition is a simultaneous process. When she's composing music, she already has a certain choreography in mind. She does not view the music and the dance as two separate things, but as two components that flow together. Like she always says, I see music and I hear dance. This is the speciality of her choreography. Be it her dance or her music, neither can be analyzed in isolation. They can only be seen together. In fact, it is best when they are seen together. For instance, one of the most classic examples of Paduka's style is a piece that she choreographed a long time ago called Sukhalasyam. It is based on this concept of the music and dance coming together. It's based also on the concept of rechakas. Rechakas, the concept it's found in the Natya Shastra. They are subtle movements in the body that add beauty and fluidity to what we do and not make them seem too mechanical. The concept of a rechaka in the body is like the gamaka in music. So this Sukhalasyam, I'll just perform a small bit of it. Pa, dha, pa, ma, pa, dha, pa, ma, da, pa, ma. So if we take each of these positions to be equivalent to one swarasthana in the ragam, when done with rechakas and when put together with the music, pa da pa ma pa da pa ma da pa ma pa ga. So the entire composition, entire choreography for the whole bit goes like this. It's the music and the dance are intertwined. When she takes up an existing piece of literature to work with, she never starts setting the music and dance immediately. Not before she is convinced of the subject matter and her thorough understanding of it. Her next step is to get into the mind of the author and view the composition from their perspective. This will be the first interpretation that she gives. And when she choreographs something, it is not like she sits down separately, the music is running on her head and she's choreographing and she's noting it down. It's never been like that. If she has the music ready, then her choreography is when we are standing in front of her and she choreographs then and there and she asks us to perform. That's her process. She doesn't write it down separately in a notebook. It's not like that. It's very spontaneous. The first criterion for Paduka to compose music for a piece of literature is that the lyrics must be inspiring. They must make her want to compose music for them. So naturally, she is most comfortable when she chooses the text herself. She would make sure she understands the lyrics and the layers of meaning behind them before she decides how to set them to music. In other words, the content decides the music. Her compositions reveal the attention to detail. Sometimes the meaning of certain words would decide the way she wants them to be sung. I have taken two examples from her Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha. One is a Pashuram that she's taken, which describes the beauty of Krishna playing the flute and how it affects his, what effect it has on his surroundings. One verse describes how the trees bend and sway to his music, showering flowers, and in any direction he moves, they bend towards that direction. So, along with the music, மரங்கள் வந்து மதுதாரைகள் பாயும் மலர்கள் வீழும் வளர் கொம்புகள் தாழும் இறங்கும் கூம்பும் திருமால் நின்று பக்கம் நோக்கி நோக்கி அவை செய்யும் குணமே. The other example is from Namakkal Kavinyar's Tamil translation of the Bhagavad Gita, again something that she's used in Krishnaya Tubhyam. It's a translation of the verse Apuryamana Machala Pratishtam from the original, which means just like even though rivers empty their waters into the sea remains still. The sea doesn't change its state. And just like that, the person who allows all those desires to, come towards him but does not get affected by it, has mental stability even in that situation, he attains the state known as Shanti. This is the general meaning of the entire verse. The first line is very interesting, the way she's composed music for it. ஆறுகள் பாய்ந்து தண்ணி அடிக்கடி புகுந்திட்டாலும் மாறு கொள்ளாது நிற்கும் மாபெரும் கடலை போலே. So this is how she's composed. ஆறுகள் பாய்ந்து தண்ணி அடிக்கடி புகுந்திட்டாலும் மாறு கொள்ளாது நிற்கும் மாபெரும் கடலே போலே. ஆறுகள், rivers don't have a very smooth course. So when she does Arugal, when she composes for Arugal Paindu, Paindu is leaping. So Arugal, the octave is higher. Paindu Tanni Adikadi Pugundittalum, entering. Pugundittalum Maru Kolladu, that which does not change its state. Maru Kolladu Nirkum. It cannot be sung like Maru Kolladu. You can't be sung with gamakas. It doesn't convey the meaning of the word. Hence it has to be sung in monotone. This way, through music also, she conveys the meaning of the text. Sometimes, depending on the words or even the subject matter as a whole, the very treatment of a raga will be different. For instance, in her full-length production of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna has become dejected on seeing the Kuru army and he's given up arms and saying, I will not fight. There is a verse where Krishna is asking him, where has this depression set in from? This does not become of you. This will neither help you attain heaven, nor will it get you praise. Get up and fight. The way she's interpreted it is, first, Krishna is very angry. He's saying, how can you do this? You've come this far. And then he calms down and said, Ennada ipdi pandra? It's like that. But for both emotions, she's used the same raga of Atana. The beauty in this lies in the intensity of the raga when she depicts the two emotions. Arjuna Kutasthva kashmalamidam vishame samupasthitam anarya jushtam अस्वर्ग्यम् अकीर्तिकरम् अर्जुन अर्जुन Sometimes, depending on the theme of the song as a whole, when the treatment of the raga changes, you won't be able to immediately identify the raga. For example, one Purandaradasa Kriti where the gopis of Vrindavana are telling Krishna not to go away to Mathura and stay in Vrindavan. Nagashayana ninna agali ಒಂದು ರಕ್ಷಣ ಹೇಗೆ ಸೈರಿಸುವೆವೋ ಮಗದ ಮೂರ ಹಂತಕ ಪೋಗುವುದು ಚಿತ್ತವೇ ಮಾಧವ ಮಧುರಗೆ ಬಾಗುವೆನು ನಿನಗೆ ಹರಿಯೇ 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 ಪೋಗುವುದು ಚಿತ್ತವೇ. Same Natakurinji that can be sung as Swami நானுந்தன்னடிமை என்று உலகமெல்லாம் அறியுமே சுவாமி நாகசயன நின்ன. Such a difference in the treatment of the raga that difference really brings out the whole theme and the feel and the emotion that's brought out in the composition of Purandaradasa. Paduka has had taken inspiration from existing compositions also, like her Achyuta from Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha, which is composed in Hamir Kalyani. Achyuta, Achyuta Vishati Chittam Apatrapam me Apatrapam me Twayi. This, she's often said, the inspiration for her to compose the first verse of Rukmini's letter in Hamir Kalyani was Muthuswami Dikshitar's Purahara Nandana, which is also in Hamir Kalyani. Purahara Nandana Ripukula Bhanjana. But Paduka often finds inspiration from very unconventional sources. For example, one Tillana that she composed in Raga Harini. I don't want to go into the story of how the raga was created. It'll take a while. But the Tillana goes like this. Nadridridim dirana dim tadira tatara tatani tatum tananadina nadridridim dirana dim tadirana dim tadirana dim tadirana dim tadirana dim tadira tatara tatani tatum tananadina. The inspiration for this is from a very old but beautiful Hindi film song. Some of you may know it. O Sajna, composed by Salil Chaudhary, rendered by the one and only Lata Mangeshkar ji. O Sajna, बरखा बहार आए रस की पुहार लाए आँखियों में प्यार लाए ओ सजना नाद्रिद्रिदिम धीरना दीम तदिर ततर तातनि ततुम. So that's one very surprising inspiration for a Tillana. Another one, I'm just going to play a very small bit of music now. this has an even more surprising source of inspiration. This is from her group production actually, Pavai Nonbu, where she has used this bit of music as a prelude to the Tirupavai Ongi Ulagalanda Uttaman Perpadi. The production is a confluence of the Tirupavai and the Tiruvempavai compositions. The reason, so the music that I played now is based on the tune of a Thai song, as in from Thailand, not this Thai. There is a reason she's used this tune from a Thai song. In Thailand, she found, as part of her research, she found that the Tirupavai and the Tiruvempavai, it's celebrated as the Trippevai, Triyampevai festival, where the Tirupavai, Tiruvempavai are recited. So it's most significant that in a production that brings together Tirupavai and Tiruvempavai, she's used this little bit of music as a prelude to one of the compositions. The range of subjects that Paduka has taken up for performance is mind-blowing. But she has a soft corner for certain abstract concepts. She loves to work with philosophical concepts that she can dramatize to make it more understandable to the common audience. This love for concretizing abstraction gets reflected in her solo productions like Jai Jai Shankara, Bhagavad Gita, Valluvarum Vedanerium, where she's compiled and performed for Tirukkural also. When handling texts like the Bhagavad Gita, she sometimes resequences the verses to suit the syntax of her choreography while still keeping in mind the core of the text. The best example of this is, of course, her full-length production of the Bhagavad Gita. If she finds the same concept or theme being discussed in two or more different verses from different chapters, she would put them together. This applies not only to texts like the Bhagavad Gita. Paduka also has the credit of composing music for the first Kannada Varnam, which is a Purandaradasa Kriti adapted into the format of a Varnam. The first Hindi Varnam, a Meera Bhajan. A lot of you may have seen Pyare Darsan Dijiye. The first Bengali Varnam also, it was done for a Bengali student. In these, especially for the Purandaradasa Varnam and the Meera Varnam, she's taken the refrain, she's taken the last line, say I take up the Meera Bhajan, then Meera Dasi Janam Janam Ki, that will become the Charanam and the refrain after every Sahitya in the second half. So, say for example, Meera Dasi Janam Janam Ki, Meera Dasi Janam Janam Ki, पड़ी तुम्हारे पाए पड़ी तुम्हारे पाए मेरा दासी जन्म जन्म की. But right at the very end, she goes back to the Pallavi. The Pallavi will be प्यारे दरसन दीजो आए तुम बिन रह्यो न जाए. So after the very last Sahityam, मिलकर तपत बुझाए प्यारे प्यारे दरसन दीजो आए. She comes back to the main idea of the entire Varnam. Similar format is followed for the Purandaradasa composition-based Varnam as well. Paduka loves to play with intertextuality. She would take verses and stanzas from 3 different texts in 3 different languages, compile them and blend them so beautifully because she'll find connections in theme, in emotion, in meaning in these texts when she compiles them. 2 examples. Both are from Ramaya Tubhyam Namaha. The first one, of course, Annalum Nokinan, Avalum Nokinal, from the Sita Swayamvaram scene, where she's brought together the Tamil verses of Kamban's Ramayanam and the Hindi verses of Tulsidasa's Ramayana. When Rama and Sita meet gazes, then it's Kamban's Tamil Ramayanam that's been used. When Sita is reacting to seeing Rama for the first time, then she's taken lines from Tulsidasa's Ramayana. The first part where this entire segment is happening, she's taken a ragam that is actually common to both halves of India, if you can say, Yaman Kalyani. So, கண்ணோடு கண்ணினை கவ்வி ஒன்றை ஒன்று எண்ணவும் நிலை பெறாது உணர்வும் ஒன்றிட थके नयन रघुपति छवि देखे पर कन्ही हूँ परिहरिणी मेखे अधिक स्नेह देह भय भोरी सरद ससी जनु चितवच्च कोरी लोचन मगरामहि उरहानी दीन हे पलक कपाट सयानी. When next the Sakhi of Sita Sakhi comes in very embarrassed and says, you can meditate on Devi later, for now you meditate on Rama's face. Very embarrassed Sakhi. But she's used a slightly different raga for this. धरि धीरज ऐसे आनी सयानी सीतासन बोले गह पानी बहुरी गौरी कर ध्यान करे हो भूप किशोर देखे दिन ले हो सकुची सिया तब नयन उधारे सिया नयन उधारे अवलुम नोकिनाल is how she reconnects back to Kamban. The second segment, I'm going to go back to the Kaikeyi asking Rama to go away. This time, the beauty of Paduka's intertextuality lies in her incorporation of a verse from the Bhagavad Gita to show Rama's reaction. Dukkheshu anudvignamanaha, sukheshu vigataspruhah, vita raga bhaya krodhah, sthitadhi muniruchyate. The verse basically means one who is not depressed when they're in times of sorrow, one who is not overjoyed in times of happiness, one who has given up all desires, envy, anger, fear, and one who has a steady mind. He is known as a muni, a very high state of being. Describes Rama well enough. Here is where all three components of Paduka's choreography come into play so beautifully. The choreography, the music, and the lyrics. So the verse, when placed in this context, Kaikeyi has asked Rama to leave, and Rama, this is the verse used to describe Rama's state of mind at that point of time. A very neutral, calm, composed state of mind. He's not happy, nor is he sad that he's leaving. Musically, Dukkeshu anudvignamanaha सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीमुनिरुच्यते. दुःखेषु अनुद्विग्नमनाः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वीतरागभयक्रोधः, sung in monotone. That's how stable his mind is. That's how unchanging Rama's mind is. What does that make him? Sthitadhimuniruchyate. That makes him equal to a muni. One who has all control over his mind and his senses. Choreography-wise, Paduka literally does nothing. She stands as Rama in the center. She doesn't do Dukkheshu anudvignamanaha sukheshu, no hands. Just stands as Rama in the center while this is being sung. So the entire character of Rama is brought out in silence and stillness of body language. That is the beauty of this segment. That's the beauty of Paduka's choreography as a whole. As a choreographer, when she performs her own choreography, certain things are fixed. Many are not. She often performs impromptu to many songs depending on her thought process at that point of time on stage. Paduka always says she never acts on stage, she only reacts. Which means when she is in character, she is in character, and if there's a character in front of her, she sees the character. Tatrupama, she sees that character on stage. If there is Krishna in front of her, she sees Krishna, she knows Krishna, she feels like Krishna is saying and doing something, saying something to her, she only reacts to it. That's how she puts it. Whatever she performs it with conviction that comes from knowing the subject inside out and believing in it. Hence, naturally, she expects the same conviction when her students also perform on stage. I have been extremely fortunate to have learnt and performed some of her most classic choreographies like Sukhalasyam and Kalinga Nartanam from Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha, which brings me to my experience of dancing to her choreography. When I perform something that she has choreographed, especially if it is a piece that she has immortalized over the years, I have an added responsibility of not just performing that piece properly, but also of living up to the confidence that she has in me that I can perform that piece. It's actually very significant that I am speaking about dancing to her choreographies at this point, because in another 2 weeks or so, for one of my solos this season, Paduka has asked me to present Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha on stage. So that is the experience of learning Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha is, I think, I'm going to focus a little bit on that now, because it's very apt that I'm speaking on this topic right now at this point of time. I have watched Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha many times since childhood. There are certain things, certain movements that she expects to be done only in a certain way, because she has envisioned it that way. For instance, there was a certain walk, a gait that she taught me. And I didn't get it the first time, or the second time, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth time. I must have done it about 15 to 20 times before she was sort of satisfied with it. There is a disadvantage and an advantage in having watched Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha so many times. One, the advantage, main advantage, I know the songs, I know the choreography, but like everybody else, I have only watched it with awe. I've never analyzed it because I've never performed it. I won't call it a disadvantage. There's a slight catch in this. Because when Paduka said, I'm going to teach you Krishnaya Tubhyam Namaha, she finished teaching me the entire thing in collectively about an hour and a half. I was terrified. I'm still terrified. I asked her, Avlodana, that's it, don't you want to see it again? She said, Illa, evlodara paathirka, nee pannidave, abdinta. Added responsibility, but I hope I'm able to carry it off. But she also gives a lot of room for me to explore the compositions on my own and bring my own individuality to it. Now, the challenge for me is to bring out a balance of the two. This ongoing experience of learning and dancing to Paduka's choreography, especially the whole process of choreography, learning that, has informed and influenced me immensely in my own humble foray into choreography. I have had a few tries, mostly with good results. Recently, but I want to talk about a video that we brought out recently. It's called Nidhivan Rasa Rasa, a very small offering to Krishna that we brought out for Janmashtami this year, me and a few other senior students of Nrityodaya. It's based on the Bhagavatam, and it's about the Rasa Leela. What I realized what I found most important to me, what is important to me is that is with Paduka's style of choreography, the music and the dance must go together. I was very keen on that. We've performed Nidhivan to an instrumental flute music from a 2012 Bollywood film. It's called OMG. But the flute bit, a 2.5 minute bit, it's a very beautiful piece that it was almost like it was made to be danced for, and it thankfully set in well with the choreography as well. But I was not satisfied with it the first few times that I made notes. I made notes because I am a novice at this. I am a beginner at this. But I realized by the end of it how much it had changed from where it started and where the final result was, because where it started was in a very, very different form. But when it ended, it all just fell into place. And I showed it to Paduka because her approval is most important for all of us. And she said, you know, it's very beautiful, and you know, movement avlo alaga part oda porde appadina, that was enough for us. That one sign of approval was enough. So what I realized was that, one, how much her style of choreography has influenced me. When I try to choreograph something, I don't like her, I take cues from her, yes, but I don't try to choreograph for the sake of choreographing. I don't say, okay, I'm going to take this piece of music and I'm going to choreograph and I'm going to do it for the sake of it. No, just like the guru, the sishya also will want to, I want to dance for that music, and then I will take it up to choreograph for that. A couple of projects I've worked on like that, and thankfully both have come out really well. For me, the biggest takeaway from this whole experience of dancing Paduka's choreography is the understanding that, first and foremost, the content and the choreography that I am performing is not my own. I'm only executing the creator's vision. So her interpretation and inputs gain first priority. But I cannot and will not try to imitate her exactly. Having said that, even though there are certain nuances that I cannot imitate, there are some that I cannot help but try to emulate. This is not an imitation, but an inspiration that has subconsciously been embedded in me because I've been watching her for so long, and also for me, life is practically a Gurukula Vasam. So it's constant osmosis of information at home that I've been blessed to have, and all that kind of culminates in what I do, and how I perform her choreography, how I perform anything on stage. These are very subtle things that cannot really be put into words. They need to be experienced. This is the experience that I'm currently learning from, or trying to learn from, learning to imbibe, emulate, perform, and hopefully somewhere along the way make it my own. Once again, I thank Apurvaka and the team of Navdisha for having given me this opportunity to speak of my guru's choreographies, and to all of you for listening to me so patiently. I actually had a few video clips that I wanted to play, but due to some technical snag on my side, I wasn't able to. Hopefully sometime in future I can share them with you. Thank you so much.